Have you ever heard of an island called Clipperton? If not, don't feel alone. Most of the world doesn't even know it exists, but maybe they should. We're talking about an isolated land surrounded by violent waters and completely off the beaten path. A place where, in a dark past, a group of people was abandoned without the possibility of escape, without help, without hope. And in the middle of this desperate situation, a cruel and brutal abusive king emerged, plunging the survivors into an endless nightmare. Today, we will take you to this island, a piece of land surrounded by horrors and tragedies that seem straight out of a macabre tale. If you're brave enough to stay until the end, you'll discover how a group of Mexicans got caught in a cycle of abuse, hunger, and death. A story so dark that not even Hollywood screenwriters would dare write something like it. A small dot on the map. Have you ever heard of a place so small and remote that it seems like an invisible dot in the middle of the world's largest ocean? That's Clipperton Atoll, one of the most isolated and mysterious islands you could try to find on Google Maps. And even if you know where it is, it's still hard to locate. With a circumference of only 9 kilometers, you could walk around the island in the blink of an eye, if the scorching sun and oppressive heat didn't make you give up halfway through. From above, Clipperton looks like a painting, a nearly perfect ring of white sand with sparse vegetation, and, in the center, a bluish-green lagoon. Beautiful, right? But as the saying goes, appearances can be deceiving. Up close, paradise feels more like purgatory. There's no port, no freshwater source, no decent shade to rest under. It's basically a natural trap. It's no wonder that for a long time, nobody bothered to mark the atoll on their maps. But today, believe it or not, this tiny piece of land lost in the Pacific Ocean is an overseas French territory. Yes, France. And if you're wondering what the French have to do with all of this, hold on tight. The story is worthy of a horror movie script, complete with pirates, hidden treasures, territorial disputes, and a bloody ending no one saw coming. History. To understand how it all began, we have to go back to the 15th century. In 1521, Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan sighted the atoll during his famous Pacific expedition. He marked the location on his nautical charts, but didn't bother to stop there. You can't blame him. With no fresh water, no food, and in the middle of nowhere, this little patch of land wasn't exactly a tropical haven. So the atoll was just another entry in his travel log. The real plot twist came in the 18th century when an English pirate named John Clipperton entered the picture. In 1705, he found the atoll to be the perfect hiding place for his operations in the North Pacific. Imagine a practically invisible spot in the middle of the ocean where he could stash what he looted from Spanish ships traveling the region. According to legend, the pirate buried a colossal treasure in the sands of the atoll. And like any good legend, this supposed treasure still fuels the imagination of adventurers today. But if you think the pirate stayed there until the end of his life, think again. The island was a good hiding spot, but not a home. After about 10 years of use, it was abandoned, along with the treasure no one ever found. That's when the French stepped in, renaming the location Island of Passion and declaring it French territory. The logic was simple. Pirates don't have territorial rights. But after all this effort, the atoll fell back into obscurity. Why? Simple. There was nothing worthwhile there. No gold, no natural resources, nothing to entice the French. It became just another point on the map. The Guano Fever. In the late 19th century, the world discovered that guano, bird droppings accumulated on Pacific islets, was a rich fertilizer. European and American nations went crazy over this white gold. Farmers needed to increase food production, and guano was the ideal solution. Suddenly, remote islands became valuable sources of fertilizer. Clipperton Atoll wasn't exactly a gold mine, but rather a guano mine. Its remote and inhospitable location didn't stop various nations from coveting it. Naturally, Mexico was interested, as the island was close to its coast. The United States also kept an eye on it, always eager to expand its influence in the Pacific. And France, with its colonial past, also claimed rights over the atoll. These disputes brought Clipperton out of anonymity. Ships started arriving, workers were sent to extract guano, but no one settled there permanently. The ownership of the territory remained unclear for decades, until Mexico decided to step in. Mexico enters the scene. Ever wonder what happens when a government decides to turn an isolated place in the middle of the ocean into a strategic base? That's exactly what Mexico tried to do in the early 20th century. The idea seemed simple. Send soldiers, officials, workers, and their families to Clipperton Atoll to show the world that the island was Mexican and under control. On paper, the plan made sense. In practice, things turned out very differently. Between 1908 and 1914, about 100 people, Men, women, and children lived on this forgotten piece of land. They brought weapons, food, and hope. They planted coconut trees, built a makeshift lighthouse, and tried to turn the atoll into a home. But survival there depended on one thing: supply ships from Acapulco that arrived every 2 months. Without these ships, they had nothing. No water, no food, no news from the outside world. For a time, the strategy worked. The Mexicans fished, hunted birds, and did their best to survive. But the situation began to deteriorate with the Mexican Revolution in 1910. The political chaos on the mainland meant that supply ships stopped coming. And with that, the real nightmare began. Without food, medicine, or communication, and relying solely on rainwater for hydration, the islanders' patriotic mission turned into hell. The self-proclaimed king of the island. Just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, they did. With most of the men dead or incapacitated, only one healthy adult male remained: Victoriano Alvarez, the lighthouse keeper. In this lawless land, surrounded by weakened women and children, he didn't need much to seize control. Armed with a revolver, he declared himself the King of Clipperton. His rule was one of the darkest chapters in the atoll's history. Isolated from the world, the women and children became his prisoners. There was nowhere to run, no way to call for help. Alvarez used hunger and fear as weapons, subjecting the women to violence and abuse. His reign of terror continued unchecked until the island's survivors, in a desperate act of courage, killed him in 1917, ending his tyranny. Shortly after, an American ship arrived and rescued the survivors. They found a traumatized group of women and children, skeletal and wounded, but alive. Aftermath and legacy. When news of Clipperton reached the world, it was a shock. The story became a symbol of abandonment and cruelty, showing what happens when humans are pushed to their limits. Ownership disputes between Mexico and France continued until 1931, when an international arbitration awarded the atoll to France. Today, Clipperton is uninhabited, visited only by researchers and occasional expeditions. It's a desolate place with no infrastructure or inhabitants, a haunting reminder of its dark history. In summary, Clipperton Island is a remote, enigmatic atoll in the vast Pacific Ocean, steeped in mystery and history. It has witnessed the rise and fall of human ambitions, the relentless power of nature, and the resilience of its unique ecosystems. From the guano rush of the 19th century to the haunting stories of its last inhabitants, Clipperton Island stands as a poignant reminder of humanity's connection to the natural world. Today, it thrives as a sanctuary for wildlife, a testament to nature's enduring spirit, and a call for us to preserve what is fragile yet invaluable. As it continues its timeless journey, Clipperton Island reminds us that even the most remote places hold lessons about our shared history and responsibility to the planet. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved you, share it, start a conversation, and let's make a difference. Until next time, stay curious and compassionate.